Good morning, everybody joining in. Just a sound check. Good seeing everybody. We are admitting people into the session and we will be with you shortly. Thank you for joining. Morning to everybody joining the session. Thank you for spending some time with us today. We're just admitting more people into the meeting. This is just to help you sound check to see if your volume is there. And yes, so great seeing everybody. Thanks for being here. Good morning, everybody. I think we can start with some housekeeping. Thank you, Jody, for helping admitting more people into the session. Really appreciate your help. Ladies and gents, obviously this is a Zoom meeting, so we're not doing it as a webinar. Webinar, nobody can unmute yourself, but with a meeting you can. So we're asking you to please stay on mute, and we will allow questions and answers during the panel discussion at the end of the session, during which you can, raise your hand. And once you've been recognized, you're welcome to ask questions. You're also welcome to use the chat room to post questions should you have questions for the panelists. And during the panel discussion, we'll have a look at it. And some of them, many a time, the panelists will answer the questions in the chat room already. So, yeah, the session is today proudly hosted by EasyClear, and I just want to put up our program. Just bear with me for a moment. All right, so we're talking digital transformation of the supply chain. And let me just get this one here. Right, digital transformation of the supply chain. It's 11th of May 2023, proudly hosted by EasyClear. We've got exciting panelists. We've been looking forward to this. As we've informed you in our email this morning, unfortunately, Bob Momon was called into a presidential meeting, which is taking place this morning, so she can't present anymore, but she actually got Desiderio Fernandez as a substitute, a well-capable person and knowledgeable person, and he's going to present in that slot of so thank you very much, Desiderio, for committing to present this morning on such a late notice. Right, we will go through the program as we go along, and let's give some recognition to our sponsors and our associates, because these sessions obviously are complementary, and we need somebody to pay the bill, and we've got valued sponsors making this possible. All right, so just some a little bit fun we have here today, and usually is that there will be a quiz at the end of the sponsor recognition. You see we've got two Magneto rechargeable LED compact lights that we're going to courier to the winners. How it works is that at the end of the sponsors recognition, we will ask some questions about our sponsors, and the person answering the question right will be the winner, and we will obtain his delivery address and courier the prize to you. So hence you should listen carefully, and maybe you can be a winner here this morning. All right, so let's give recognition to very valued associates and sponsors. We hosted today by EasyClear. Michael Henning will tell you more about our hosting organization this morning and during his presentation. So thank you very much, EasyClear, for putting this program together for us and hosting us today. We really appreciate you as gold sponsor as well. Right, the Transport Forum has got formal associates in terms of professional bodies in the industry. There are obviously other associates involved as well, but these are on a formal agreement. And let's quickly have a look at them. And now, from now on, any sponsoring or associate company, if you want to say a few words yourself about your organization, you're welcome to interrupt me, unmute yourself, interrupt me, and you're welcome to say a few words about your organization. Else I'll just continue. So the first one we're looking at here is the South African Association of Freight Forwarders, already established in 1921. Dr. Unito Maria is the CEO, and they're keen supporters of the Transport Forum. You can see they're a national association with members throughout the Republic of South Africa, and their members make a major contribution to facilitating trade within South Africa. So the member companies manage over 80% of South Africa's international trade. Thank you, SAF, for your association. Then we've got the South African Express Parcel Association, Gary Marshall and team. So they're the representative body and voice of the express delivery industry in South Africa. Thank you very much, SAFA. We've got the Road Freight Association. They say without trucks, So without trucks, South Africa stops. Thank you, Gavin Kelly, Gold Associate of the Transport Forum, and they're making sure that our trucks keep on running on our roads. Thank you very much, RFA. We've got RIA, that's the African Rail Industry Association, Michelle and Flapo and team. So they say they are a preeminent body in South Africa representing players in the railway industry. You can see their mission is to advocate for the rail industry and third-party access to the country's railway network. Such important work they are doing. Then we've got South African Bus Operators Association. Shamini Naidu is the acting CEO until they found a replacement for Basil Cavender. So thank you, Shamini, for standing in. But the SABOA, they represent the bus and coach industry. And they play a vital role in the social and economic development of our country because public transport is such a necessity, efficient public transport. So thank you, SABOA, for your association. We also got formal relationships with media houses. Obviously, as I previously said, there are more, but these are on a formal agreement. We've got Freight News, Railways Africa Magazine, and Creamer Media's Engineering News. Freight News is news by Freight and Trading Weekly. You can see news and features for import-export decision makers. Obviously, ladies and gents, if you're not being subscribed to these magazines, you're losing out big time. Keep up to date what's happening in the industry is so important. And you can see the website there, freightnews.co.za. And it's all about logistics news. Very important. We've got Railways Africa Magazine, Philippa Dean and team. It's the African Continent Specialist Trade Technical Business-to-Business online publication, covering all aspects of the rail sector. Then we've got Engineering News from Creamer Media. You can see they say the premier source of real economy news, daily coverage of South Africa's transport and automotive sectors, accurate and timely news reportage. And obviously all these sponsors and associates, you can find their logos and links on the Transport Forum's website. Creamer Media also made a video available for us, so let's see if I can play it for you.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Engineering News and Mining Weekly magazine, published on Friday, 12 May 2023. In this week's cover article, Engineering News and Mining Weekly Senior Deputy Editor Skulk Burger writes that the Carbon Border Adjustment Scheme is raising anxiety among South African exporters. Companies in countries that are carbon intensive, such as South Africa, may face carbon border adjustment tariffs that are also linked to indirect emissions, as the European Union is assessing methods to include these emissions in the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism scheme. The Engineering News features focus on local manufacturing, where a specialist fabricator is stronger than ever in tough market conditions. Fire prevention and protection, where Industry 4.0 enables a surge in automated firefighting solutions. And hydraulics and pneumatics, where an automation company is moving into the future with controlled pneumatics. The Mining Weekly features focus on mine water, where mines change their approach to water management. And education and training in mining, where Venetia prioritizes critical skills as first production pressure mounts. This week's business leader is Bulela Mgobozi, product manager at Cispro Africa. And in this week's cartoon, the appointment of a dedicated Minister of Electricity has seen power struggles over ministerial powers, mixed messages over the Energy Action Plan, and general confusion over who is actually in charge of what. If it doesn't settle, it will make the load shedding outlook even more dire than it already is. In other exciting news, the new design for the Engineering News and Mining Weekly websites launched this week, from which we'll continue to deliver comprehensive, concise, and clear South African business news. We hope you enjoy this week's edition of Creamer Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly. Be sure to subscribe to the magazine that offers you in-depth news about developments in the real economy by emailing subscriptions@engineeringnews.co.za. Enjoy the read and see you next time.
Thank you, Engineering News, for that great weekly wrap. Ladies and gents, now we're continuing with our sponsors, and we've got a platinum sponsor of the Transport Forum, has been part of us since inception. That's Ctrack. They are a leading global software as a service and big data company for vehicle tracking, fleet management, and insurance telematics solutions. You can see their operations span 6 continents in over 55 countries. So they've got over 30 years of experience in keeping mobile assets for consumers, small and mid-sized businesses, and large enterprises always visible. So that results in vehicle security, safer driving, and more efficient fleet operations. Thank you so much, Ctrack, for your continued support. We really appreciate it. And they also gave us a video to have a look at the exciting product they have.
Time management, fleet productivity, and driver management remain among the most critical priorities for fleet managers, business owners, or anyone managing a fleet of vehicles. Ctrack has innovated further by introducing enhancements to Crystal, the advanced telematics and fleet management platform, delivering an always-on, scalable, flexible, and fully customizable experience. All the benefits and features of Crystal remain, with driver management and fleet productivity enhancements, enabling your business, big or small, to elevate business insight with quality data and AI-powered predictions for immediate and productive decision-making. Users can now ensure optimum fleet utilization with daily productivity reports displayed on the Crystal dashboard for easy access. Driver jobs can be scheduled with ideal routes based on traffic data, complete with indicated and mandatory fuel stops based on preferred locations. Delivery locations and addresses can be accessed from the pre-populated drop-down list, further enriching ease of use. Drivers access these assigned jobs from the Crystal application on virtually any smartphone or tablet from anywhere in the world, giving them specific duties, precise locations, optimal routes with real-time traffic updates, and even assigned delivery times, updated in real time based on the predefined routes provided, reducing unproductive idle time. Another exciting addition is that Crystal now features customizable electronic proof of delivery with sign-on glass and photo evidence technology, ensuring safe and digital proof of delivery. Crystal, powered by Ctrack, provides enhanced productivity and time management. Get Crystal and have the power to predict.
Thank you, Ctrack, for sharing Crystal. What a great product. The Transport Forum is proudly associated with this great product. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got University of Johannesburg, the Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management, also being part of the Transport Forum since inception. Prof. Jackie Walters, Prof. Nalin Pisa, Prof. Rose Rook, and so on. They're great people, also mentoring myself, and I really appreciate their support. So thank you, UJ, for your continued support. We've got Pegasus. Pegasus is a consulting organization of note as well, changing lives, changing worlds. You can see they say in South Africa, we leverage our sector-leading expertise and experience to craft and implement mobility solutions which work and have substantial impact. And you can see they're active in cities, climate, energy, resilience, transport, waste, and water. So thank you, Pegasus. They're also presenting our event on the 8th of June, which we're looking forward to. We've got Unitron Supply Chain Solutions, another gold sponsor. They say innovation, expertise, and delivered. It's a leading provider of integrated transportation, warehousing, and supply chain-based services to customers with a variety of needs, offering bespoke value propositions in each segment. Thank you, Unitrons. JC Auditors, the auditors at Certification Compliance One Solution. They are a SANAS accredited certification body providing internationally recognized certifications. So important, especially if you take into cognizance the road transport management system and self-regulation. Yeah, very important to be compliant. We've got Bidday Cargo, another gold sponsor, fulfills the needs of the express cargo industry for daytime and overnight cargo capacity across a comprehensive Southern and East Africa footprint. Thank you, Bidday Cargo, for your great support. We've got the Simotech. It's one of our new gold sponsors. Excuse me, you can see they offer smart supply, smart parking, smart security, smart kiosks, and hardware solutions. You can see the sectors, focus areas: safe city, parking management, supply chain mobility, and public safety. Very interesting and great organized. If you take one of the parking universities and colleges, parking garages, event parking, on street parking, restaurants and eateries, and so on. So a great solution. Thank you very much, Simotech. Ticket Pro Group. Ticket Pro's got 2 sponsorships of the Transport Forum. The one project they're doing is the online booking tool. You can see there's no contract, no hidden fees, just good business with fair pricing. So it's an online corporate traveling booking tool with everything you need and nothing you don't want. Great product. Thank you, Ticket Pro Travel. And then they also have the AFC solution, Ticket Pro Smart Tap. There we go. You can see this solution includes key features like comprehensive route management, flexible passenger management methods, flexible route and fare product setup, shift and dispatch management, cashier system inspection tools, and comprehensive management information system reports. Thank you very much, Ticket Pro Smart Tap. We also have Global Trade Solution, many years, also a gold sponsor of the Transport Forum. You can see they're talking about innovative solutions, transforming the global supply chain. They've acted in consulting and strategy, software solutions, and specialized services. That is Global Trade Solution. Thank you very much, GTS. We've got Zatari, formerly known as Oricon, consulting engineers of note, many years a gold sponsor of the Transport Forum. So thank you, Zatari, for always being there for our engineers and being good consultants in the industry. Right, we've got Kuba, transforming ticketing as part of the ICM Mobility Group, which enables public and private transport to move into the digital era. You can see journey planning, smart ticketing, streamlining electronic payment, shaping the digital transformation of the mobility sector. Thank you, Kuba. Standard Bank. Here we've got Kathy Bell and her team. You can see they've got more than 160 years of experience. They believe that dreams matter and that together we can make them a reality. They're active in more than 20 countries. Kathy Bell from Standard Bank also involved in a road transport management system, very important, self-compliance, and so on. So yeah, Standard Bank, thank you very much for your great support. All right, ladies and gents, now this is now where we get to the quiz. And what you're going to do kindly is that you open up the chat room and I'm going to ask 2 questions and the person's answering the questions right, they can be the winner of that prize. There's the sponsors on the screen, and so the answer is one of these that you see on the screen. So the first question, and I'm going to open up my chat room here to make sure that I can see who's answering correctly. All right. Here it goes. First question. Which organization is a supplier of a smart parking solution? There we go, Tembi. Asimutech. So Tembi, congratulations. You're very sharp. I'm just making a note here. Tembi Lubisi, congratulations. And here is the next question now. I think this one you might get much easier. Who is our hosting company today? Is it clear? There we go. Let me see who was first. Devlin Naidu. Thank you, Devlin. Congratulations. You won that one. You guys are very sharp. Great. Ladies and gents, that was lots of fun. Congratulations to our winners. We have your prizes couriered to you. I just want to bring under your attention that the Transport Forum has got the business directory. This is one of our BEE initiatives as well. It's a very popular categorized business directory where you can get your company listed on a Transport Forum's popular website. And the feedback we're getting is that they're getting really lots of action through this. You can see lots of categories, and we've outsourced this to Olga Mashilu's company, Buleng Bontlek Consultant. There's a number. You'll also receive an email after this event, inviting some feedback from yourself, and also there you can indicate whether you want Olga to give you a call to get your company listed. It's only 450 rands per year to be listed, so that's not money, and you can get a lot of traction through this. So yeah, great, Olga, for doing this work. Ladies and gentlemen, the Transport Forum's website, you can download the presentations from the website, transportsec.com, and the presentation will be uploaded to this website. The presentation made available, obviously, will be uploaded to this website, and not later than about 6 o'clock, 1800 hours today. And you can download them. You can actually download presentations being uploaded since 16 years ago when the Transport Forum started. So there are more than 900 presentations you can download. It's a very powerful knowledge base in the transport sector. And once you've opened up the Transport Forum website, you will see that there's a to the left of your screen, there's a user login. And the user login, there you can actually type in your password, your username and password. Let me just close this little screen here. And should you not have an account yet with the Transport Forum, you create your own complimentary account by going to the user menu and you click on sign up, and you can create your own username and password and log in. And once you've logged in, you get a very simple but powerful little search engine. So you can go to events, you select downloads. Once you selected downloads, you will find a little search engine. And this search engine, you'll see there are two ways that you can search, two fields. The top one, you type in a text or title or a description, and you hit search, and it will search for that title or description or person's surname or whatever through all more than 900 presentations and bring it up for you. Or you can go to category and you can select the event date. And you hit search, and it will bring up all the presentations for that event. Isn't that convenient and powerful? So enjoy obtaining content with the Transport Forum. Thanks to all our sponsors and associates. So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us back to our program. And what we are going to do today is digital transformation of the supply chain, being hosted by EasyClear. And the general manager with EasyClear, Mr. Michael Hennon, is going to do the formal welcome and introduce us to the first presenter. So, Michael, thank you very much. We're looking forward to this event.
Morning, Harry. Morning, everybody there. Let me just try here and share my screen very quickly. I trust you can all hear me very well. Start my slideshow, presentator view. There we go. So just very quickly by way of introduction, thank you, Harry. EasyClear is a software service provider to the logistics, freight forwarding and clearing industry within the supply chain, with a specialist focus on customs clearing and integrations with any third-party solutions that your organization might make use of. And Harry, just give me a thumbs up if you can see the presentation there. Okay, awesome, good. Okay, so thank you very much, Harry, for that introduction, and a big thank you to all the sponsors of the Transport Forum for making today's session possible. This special interest group is even more special, given that it is technology that enables us to participate virtually and connect, collaborate, and communicate with our colleagues around the continent and of course the globe. Now, many of you will have seen scenes like these and remember this from previous events hosted. It's scenes like these that led trade and industry to start looking for solutions to the problems that besiege our supply chain. The Transport Forum has become one of the leading platforms for industry to engage one another and collaborate to highlight these issues and participate in discussions that hopefully bring about change in our industry. The fourth industrial revolution has enabled connectivity on a level that we've never seen before, the impact of which can be both humorous and, if used to our advantage, positively uplifting for communities. It's when technology is used in a responsible and collaborative manner that we see real change. Accelerated, of course, when there is a commercial gain and private sector involvement. I'm especially pleased to welcome our guest speakers from CBRTA, the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, SAF, South African Association of Freight Forwarders, and the chairperson of ASANTROP, the Mozambican Association of Freight Forwarders, and chairperson of FCFASA, the Federation of Clearing and Forwarding Associations of Southern Africa. Mr. Makibanyane Toso, Mr. Devlin Naidu, and Mr. Desiderio Fernandez, each of whom will share their unique insights on our industry challenges, projects, and specialized areas of expertise, where technology has played a primary role, or certainly can play a role in shaping the future of our supply chain. So I think without further delay, let me welcome our first guest speaker, Mr. Toso from the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, and I'll hand back to you, Harry, and thank you all. Please do enjoy the session this morning, and I hope that you get insight and great benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, much appreciated. Thank you, Makibanyane. We can see your screen. It's just that swap the two screens at the top of this place.
Morning, colleagues. Thank you, the organizers of Transport Forum, for giving the CBRTA, which is the agency of the Department of Transport, the opportunity to share with you the project that they are busy with in terms of achieving the aspiration of digital transformation of the supply chain. I am Makibanyane Toso, working as a senior researcher under the research and development unit within the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency. I joined the agency in 2010.
Makibiani,
Let
can
me
you just
just-
swap on this place? Go to the top there, this place settings, swap.
Let me see. Hey, Ria, I'm struggling now.
Yeah, the top of your screen, top left of your screen there, display settings.
Yeah. I've just turned this into full screen. Let me just do this.
You see the top left of your screen, there's show taskbar and then display settings. If you click on display settings,
Yes, okay. I've lost my cursor now.
seems we've got a challenge. I'm just looking on my side for your presentation.
Let me see.
I haven't received it yet, yeah.
Right.
Are you using two screens now?
Is it?
Slide
Yeah.
view.
Oh. Let me just stop another one and start afresh.
And just slide view.
Then slide view. How is it?
We're still waiting for slide view. There
Is
we
it
go.
okay?
Perfect. Perfect.
All right. Okay, colleagues, without wasting time, this is the lineup of the presentation: introduction, pilot planning, baseline study, the route layout, pilot project results, the limitations, findings, and conclusions, and lastly, the benefits realized in the pilot project. Colleagues, the CBRTA has developed the system called Operator Compliance Accreditation Scheme or System, which is an intelligent risk-based regulatory system for implementing quality regulation, certifying, and accrediting cross-border road transport operators based on harmonized regulations and standards. In this quality regulation, we are just aspiring that in the long term, South Africa, with its own cross-border transport operators, both freight and passenger, will be regulated through this system in line with all other applicable national legislations and regional agreements concluded by and between South Africa and the other regional countries. And let me also add to it that this AUKUS is going to be the implementing tool for triple TFP introduced by the tripartite countries. This triple TFP is the tripartite transport and transit facilitation program. And it strives towards facilitating the development of a competitive, integrated and liberalized regional road transport market in the East and Southern African region to support the tripartite free trade agreement, regional integration, and economic development. And currently, the countries that have joined this program are about 23, as follows: Angola, Botswana, Burundi, DRC, Djibouti, Eritrea, Eswatini, Ethiopia, Kenya, Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, Rwanda, South Africa, South Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Egypt, and Somalia. This is the 23 countries that have joined this triple TFP. And the expected results of this triple TFP are tripartite vehicle load management strategy, harmonized tripartite vehicle and driver regulations and standards, tripartite transport registers and information platform system, which is TRIPS, and corridor trip monitoring system, which is called CTMS. And lastly, the efficiency of regional transport corridors. Then CBRTA identified an opportunity for a joint pilot project of AUKUS and AEO, which is the Authorized Economic Operator Program, owned by SARS in 2021-22 financial year. And these two sister agencies embarked on exploring the compatibility of and the ability to integrate the AEO program and AUKUS with a view to improve compliance while mutually offering complementary benefits to common compliant cross-border operators. And the objective of this AEO are aligned to the mandate of the CBRTA as facilitating seamless cross-border movements, enhancing unimpeded flow of goods and passengers in the region, reducing operational constraints faced by cross-border operators in the region, and also enhancing business opportunities for our operators. Then when coming to pilot planning, SARS and CBRTA commissioned the working group in 2021, and they started with joint work plans. And the work of the working group culminated to a point of having or conducting the pilot phase. And in March 2022, along N4, time release study was conducted from the kilometer 7 to the border exit at Lebombo border post, with the aim to measure or determine the baseline. That period was when the border post was not yet opened 24/7 as we know it is currently. Then another stage that we took was to conduct a law enforcement training session that ran for about a week in August. And the law enforcement agencies comprised of RTMC, SAPS, and Nkomazi Traffic Department. Then lastly, the pilot phase 1 was conducted on the 26th September to October 9th, 2022. Then here comes the baseline that was conducted in March within a distance of 7 kilometers from kilometer 7 in Komati Port to the border exit in Lebombo border post. And here are the results that tells us that a truck, at least it took minimum 40 minutes within the kilometer 7 facility, at least 40 minutes, or on average 1 hour 20 minutes, and maximum 4 hours 25 minutes. And after exiting kilometer 7, then that distance to the border gate entry, it took about minimum 1 hour 5 minutes, on average 2.5 minutes, and maximum 355 minutes. And between the border entry and the border exit, that's where our operators declare their goods or declare their exports. And the time taken there, minimum was about a minute, on average 15 minutes, and the maximum 59 minutes. And the total time that was taken from kilometer 7 entry to the border entry at a minimum was about 1 hour 46 minutes. And on average 4 hours 3 minutes, and the maximum 9 hours 20 minutes. So we can see within that short span of distance, the time that is spent by the operators idly, because then if we can divide 7 kilometers by 1 hour, 46 kilometers, 46 minutes, then it tells us the vehicle there travels at 0 something kilometers per hour, meaning that the business is not moving there. Then coming to this, the first phase of the pilot project, our distance was starting from Malelane Weighbridge to the Lebombo border exit, and the distance was about 65 kilometers. Then from the Weighbridge, the trucks were turning to Coopersdal intersection, then driving straight to R571, then up to Mananga T junction, which is about 4 kilometers away from the border gate. Then we had data collectors at the Weighbridge who were collecting the time that was taken by the truck when entering the Weighbridge and when it exits the Weighbridge. Then we also had data collectors at Mananga T Junction, who were also taking the time that the truck took from exiting the weighbridge to that junction. Then we had another collectors by BP Garage, which is about 1.5 kilometers from the T junction. Then we also had data collectors by entry gate and at exit point. So here are the results that within the weighbridge, the minimum time that was taken by a truck was about 1 minute, and on average was about 3 minutes, and maximum was 17 minutes. So I'll not talk to the span between Malelane exit and Coopersdal, because Coopersdal was also we had data collectors who just were posted there for about 1 to 2 days, and we just eliminated that spot. Then from Malelane weighbridge to Mananga T Junction, a truck took about 55 minutes minimum, 1 hour 10 minutes on average, and maximum 1 hour 50 minutes. Then from that T junction to the border mouth, which is about 4 kilometers, the truck took minimum 4 minutes, on average 18 minutes, and maximum 1 hour 15 minutes. Then within the border precinct, from border entry to border exit, the truck took about minimum 3 minutes, on average 18 minutes, and maximum 1 hour 14 minutes. And the total lapsed time that was taken by the truck within that 65 kilometers, minimum was about 1 hour 3 minutes, on average 151 minutes, and maximum 4 hours 36 minutes. So we can see that there is a lot of improvement during this pilot project that has showed that the delays were minimized during this pilot project, because these vehicles, when entering N4 from Mananga T Junction, they were given a special preference in terms of driving from the T junction to the border post. Then the following risks were identified, and we have already started plans of phase 2, and the challenges were the lack of buy-in by stakeholders, and we had limited or lack of manpower by the law enforcement agencies, because other law enforcement agencies were not operating more than business hours, as the pilot project was also running till late. Then especially at Mananga T Junction, there was poor lighting, and that distracted our data collectors also to capture clearly the number plates of the vehicles that were undertaking the pilot project. And luckily, one of the operators also assisted with his mask lights, and the operation went very well. Then coming to the findings, it reveals that this process has benefited the pilot operators in the following manner: that the pilot eliminated the need to have export cargo through the Komati tripod for weighing. It reduced standing time, which would have been spent along N4 while queuing to enter the Kilometer 7 facility. Reinforced the process of ensuring that drivers put in place pre-clearance mechanisms through the customer brokers, ensured that proceed to port notification and custom declaration documentations were received well in advance before reaching the radius of about 10 kilometers from the border. And it reduced unnecessary stoppages along the route. It promoted seamless and secure movement of cargo within that 65-kilometer span of the pilot project. And the benefits were effective for facilitation of legitimate and compliant cross-border transport operations and trade, reduction in transit time, delays and downtime due to law enforcement actions in corridor and at the border post, then reduction of corridor operational constraints, which also resulted in seamless cross-border road transport operations, economic benefits, and improved productivity to traders and operators, who in turn reduced transit time and cost of doing business. Then lastly, it improved border and corridor efficiency, which improved trade flows and overall facilitation of trade and cross-border transport operations. Thank you, colleagues. That is the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Makibane, for a very interesting presentation. We really appreciate that. I'm quite sure that people will have questions for you during the panel discussion. I see, yeah, it's very interesting, the challenges you guys are having in terms of lack of buy-in from crucial stakeholders. I think that's very important. And obviously, I think corruption and stuff like that's also a big challenge here. But we believe the joint pilot and the results you're already showing us are bearing fruit, and showing fruits to be beared. And yeah, so I believe that they'll have some questions you did in the panel discussion. Thank you very much, Makibinyane. Ladies and gents, let's put up our program. Right, our next presenter then is Devlin Naidu. He's the executive SARS and other government agencies. And he's obviously from SAF, South African Association of Freight Forwarders. He's going to talk about Supply Chain 4.0, insights from SARS and other government agencies. Thank you very much, Devlin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hastian. I'm going to flag my presentation. Excuse me. Okay. Okay, so is it visible and am I audible?
Perfect, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Custodian of the Transport Forum, Mr. Harry van Hastian, Program Director, Mr. Michael Henning, and indeed event sponsors EasyClear, my fellow panelists, Mr. Makibinyane Tosu, Mr. Desiderio Fernandez, and Mr. Michael Henning. A very good morning to you and our attendees, fellow panelists and distinguished guests. On this Thursday, sunny for a change this week morning from our South offices in Johannesburg. We invite you to join us on a journey throughout today's presentation that focuses on introspection, realization, and the application of Supply Chain 4.0. As always, we acknowledge our Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Unita Maria, indeed a passionate captain of industry for SA Inc., our Head of Research and Development, Mr. Jacob van Rensburg, our International Trade Advisor, Mr. Jandrik Bezuidenhout, and our Supply Chain Analyst, Lisa de Jager, for their support and guidance in the shaping of today's presentation. So colleagues, we often hear the buzzwords, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, big data, robotics, but Elon Musk shouldn't be the only one making headlines. Today, we will go through the process and understand the concept of Supply Chain 4.0, and more especially, how do we apply Supply Chain 4.0 in our business? And this is important, the application of Supply Chain 4.0. Where are we currently? I'm going to share some insights from SARS and other government agencies and look at the core concepts of digitization and digitalization. What is it and why is it important? So colleagues, as per the definition provided by McKinsey, I'm not going to read through this, but Supply Chain 4.0 broadly covers a number of topics that looks at two aspects, which is the optimization of a process through the application of technology. And we do have technology available. We have information available. It is up to us to derive value from this information and apply it accordingly in our business, as mentioned earlier, and across the entire supply chain. One would imagine that a supply chain has many role players, starting at the country of origin and ending at the country of destination. And there's various processes that each of these role players are exposed to. So in order for us to move from a migration, in other words, to transform the process from somewhat primitive or manual, paper-based, to the electronic equivalent, digitized, optimized, the digital equivalent, we need to understand first what the process entails, and we're going to share some practical examples in this regard. As South Africa, we understand that we are the largest economy on the African continent, not necessarily amongst the top 10 fastest developing or growing economies, but we're the most industrialized economy. So that would lend itself to the derivative that exports is quite a key factor in our supply chain. And for that reason, being the most industrialized, we have a significant manufacturing base where our products leave cross-border to the rest of Africa, and from South Africa, of course, to the rest of the world as well. So let's look at the two concepts, digitization and digitalization. I'm not going to use the examples on screen, but the custodian and indeed the pioneer, Mr. Harry van Heestien, shared earlier that the Transport Forum has a repository of presentations going back 16 years. Now, for those that are young at heart, but older in terms of age, you would remember going to the library and going to a specific shelf to draw a book out, or if you were busy with your master's or doctoral studies, trying to find a journal, a specific volume or a specific edition. Now, we've taken that process and you've digitized it. Firstly, number one, you've digitized the information because you're not having to go through archival resources, flip through pages, spit on the finger and thimble in hand and try to find the information. You've now digitized the information. In other words, it's a conversion of manual or paper-based information into an electronic equivalent. Although the concepts are related, they're very distinct and invariably dependent on each other. Digitalization, you will now log in, as Harry presented earlier, your username and your password. You will access the repository and download the presentation. So what has happened? We have digitized the information, but we have digitalized the process. In other words, we've transformed the process. And that is the two concepts on today's journey. So what are some of the non-tariff barriers that exist, colleagues? Frontline inspections. On a daily basis, we receive a plethora of escalations across a diverse myriad of challenges across many government agencies and SARS, where there's delays being experienced. Either the officer has not arrived on time or information is not pulling through from the front line so that we can update the entire supply chain as to the expected delivery. So where delivery is expected in 24 hours, as an example, you have individuals that are based at the depot and they're busy doing the inspection. And then you have the importer or the cargo owner who has arranged labor to offload the container the next day on the premise that the inspection will be completed in the 24-hour cycle. But unless information is fed through, we are unable to realize the optimization through digitalization or digitization of the process. In other words, as opposed to a manual inspection report, right, that often has, I'm sure you've seen this, many lines from the top of the page all the way going down, you now have the equivalent in an app that has push notifications that delivers the information real time. And we're going to share some developments in this regard as well. Again, some of the other non-tariff barriers, without going through all of them, is the duplicative processes. In other words, if you have, for example, a SAP stock and a NRCS stock. Now it's frustrating because you've got two government agencies looking at the same container. And so when you digitalize the process, you're able to have a cross-sectional derivative analysis where the two other government agencies meet at, and it's almost sort of a conduit. And you then have a dovetail. In other words, if you look at a piece of furniture and you look at the joint, it resembles the tail of a dove because it fits perfectly like a glove. And this is the concept of integrating digitization and digitalization. And let's have a look. So colleagues, currently SARS uses the Interfront system. You've got two aspects, the entity, and you've got the transaction risk. One would recall, I think as early as Monday, SARS issued a notification in respect of VAT validations. In other words, SARS wants to verify that the BSIC number on box 2 and 8 of the SAT 500 in those data fields is in fact a valid VAT number. And this is about progressing the supply chain to be more safe, secure, and compliant. So let us look at the application in terms of SARS and other government agencies. So business is the initiator and the other government agency is the driver. And I'm going to explain this to you in a bit more detail. So do indulge me as we look at the data mine. I do understand that all the colleagues in the call, not all of the colleagues in the call are from SARS or have a customs background. Some of you are in engineering, some of you are in transport. So let's take the journey together. You may be wondering, what is data mine? What is this slide about? Let's share some insights. I make reference to HS codes. So every single item that you import, as an example, so this is a watch, let's do it together. We ask ourselves three questions. What is it? How is it made? What is its purpose? So looking at this, it is its purpose, it's to tell the time and remind me that I need to stick to 25 minutes allocated to me in today's session. But more than that, how is it made? It's made with glass. You can see here, it's clad with metal. And based on that analysis, we would derive the HS code as 9101.11.00 check digit 0. I want to explain that every single item imported into the Republic is triggered by the HS code. In other words, we do not declare to SARS Customs on box 33 that we're bringing in a watch. We give them the HS code, and that is according to the harmonized system. So around the world, the first 6 digits, being international, will be the same. So that derives or lends itself to harmonization. So we've got SARS as the responder, you've got the other government agencies as the driver, and you've got business as the initiator. We find that there's a disparity between how SARS perceives the relationship between business and other government agencies. So there's a discrepancy. And that is why collaboration is key in the digital transformation of supply chain, in the realization of supply chain 4.0. Because whilst we can map the process, we require the insights. And who is best placed to provide the insights to SARS or the other government agencies? It's business, because business deals not just with SARS, but with the other government agencies as well. So take, for example, the cross-section derivative analysis that we spoke of earlier. And if we look at a key concept, let's take the other government agency, SAPRA, and we take SARS as an example. So SARS detains the goods based on the logic provided by SAPRA, that in terms of the Medicines and Medicine Substance Act, or Related Substances Act 101 of 65, that this item is subject to the control of SAPRA. Excellent. Now, SARS is saying that, or you've entered this as an E42, I'm being a bit technical, but it's a warehouse for export. In other words, those goods are not staying in the Republic. So why should they still be subject to the regulation of SAPRA? However, Section 22(1)(c) of the Medicines Substances Act 101 of 65 says goods, irrespective of whether they're destined for the Republic or not, are subject to inspection. So business is able to look at the two pieces of legislation and ensure that the processes, when transformed digitally, are congruent, collaborative, and coherent with each other. So I spoke earlier, it was a wristwatch. It was clad with precious metal. It's not very expensive. And it has a mechanical display, right? So how does this work using artificial intelligence? We take the information. So this is primitive. It's on a PDF. Now we digitize that information. So we upload it into a central platform. And then we have a faster turnaround time. We eliminate the bias of the human element. In other words, you have predictive analytics based on logic statements. So I look at it, I can see it has glass. It's not interpretive as a human being, but it's a system statement that has been digitized using information. And let's click here to have a look. As mentioned earlier, you've got your other government agencies and the dovetailing legislation. And we look at the science of data mining and how this is going to be applied practically. I'm going to share a case study with you based on an import scenario. So you've got SARS and you've got other government agencies. You've got a longitudinal analysis. You've got a latitudinal analysis. And you need a cross-sectional integration so that the other government agency legislation does not contradict the SARS legislation. And it has to work in synchronicity to achieve safety, security, and compliance in the supply chain. So colleagues, let's put the pointer off and let's watch a bit of magic happen. So using the concept of artificial intelligence, we upload an image or a commercial invoice, the equivalent, and we reveal the HS code, which will populate as we are doing so here. And then when you click onto the artificial intelligence, it derives firstly your Schedule 1 Part 1 HS code, as mentioned earlier. Every item is classified according to the HS code. You've got your rate of duty, and you've got your Schedule 1 Part 2B as applicable, the rate of duty and the calculation thereof, as well as the compliance requirements. So what we've done is we've taken the information, we've digitized it, and in so doing, we've digitalized the process. So now you save the element of a human resource, number one. It is pinpoint accurate because you've mapped it to specific logic and problem statements. And it is also mapped to the SARS policy in terms of classification of goods. Further, it goes on to validate to the other government agency requirements applicable. So when importing aftershave or perfume, it's going to be ordinarily used by us as human beings, maybe before a late night dinner, if you will, and it is detained for port health, right? In other words, there's an other government agency element involved. And as opposed to duplicating the processes, when you ship this, maybe it's coming from Germany as an example, you've got a health certificate with a lab analysis. There is no need for a rubber stamping exercise for that document to receive a stamp. The reason being is because you've already verified through a digital channel that this is the electronic equivalent, and you click select or accept if it's compliant or reject if it's non-compliant. What have you done in the process? You've digitalized the process. So in other words, you don't have a long queue of staff members or employees that are queuing up to get documents stamped in a red file outside Port Health. And this is the underpinning logic of optimizing the human input. Instead, you can have them behind a computer and allow them to also enhance their skills in this transformation process. So let's have a look at this specific slide. And I'm sure many of you, when experiencing a SAP stop, this icon here right at the bottom best describes your face. You're very angry, you're very frustrated, you're very disappointed, and you want to swear some people, but that's a bit reactive. We can push information back into the supply chain using enterprise resources planning. Let's take a smartphone. So we've got it here, 85, 17, 13, 10, check digit 5. It is an iPhone, and it originates in the People's Republic of China. If the goods are ready, yes, we can proceed to the next step. in terms of other government agency requirements. Is a letter of authority required? Yes. Has it been applied for? No. Do not ship. So we understand, yes, it can take 29 days, 21 to 29 days from the People's Republic of China, from the port of Shanghai to the port of Durban. Brilliant. But do you want to ship goods only to arrive at the port, not to have the LOA, and end up with hundreds of thousands of rands in storage and demurrage? One would think not. So therefore, we are able to use decision tree logic in supply chain 4.0, and we encourage all the attendees that are in the custom space to apply this in your business so that you are proactive. It's all smiles, and when that container arrives, you actually have this face because your cargo has been delivered in the optimal time to your consumer, to the client. The moment you see a red siren, you obviously know that there's an element of risk, and this has the logic again based on the 12th of May, 2023. Although you have a target ETA, it's not going to work, and lightning sometimes does strike twice in the same place, and that's evident in our industry. Now, with the same logic, colleagues, I want us to look at the supply chain. Our CEO often reminds us that we need to keep the logistics network intact. And what we can do in terms of supply chain 4.0 to optimize the process is, when you get a proceed to border notification that Mr. Tosha spoke of earlier, and you don't get an exit marked for arrival, marked for exit, customs code 41 and 42. If you don't get that code at the border, immediately the siren should go off to tell you guys the supply chain is compromised. The goods have not left the Republic. It could be round tripping or ghost exports, because in supply chain, you've got the product flow, you've got the data flow, and you've got the financial flow. So you can now validate across all three paradigms that the digitization and the digitalization, in other words, the process has now been transformed using digital information. So let's have a look, colleagues, at the export cycle. So I spoke about the import cycle, and I'm sure you may be wondering, is this possible for exports as well? And indeed it is. So watch the magic happen again. We've got MSC Illinois, so many controllers that are on this call will have some cargo on this vessel, or will be loading some cargo on this vessel. So let's have a look. Using predictive data analysis, what would normally happen, colleagues, is, and I want to use a nice analogy, if I may, very quickly, Harry. I'm mindful of time, but I'm going to go on to the Eskom app, right? I'm not sure it's going to pick up here, but I do have the Eskom load shedding app, right? And when when Michael mentioned earlier that this is perfect for load shedding, I had to try and answer the question because we've just got one light at home. So I want to elaborate on this. Initially, one would remember those WhatsApp groups that would send the load shedding schedule on a PDF format. We would then take the highlighter and try and find our block. We would highlight our block, and then we would plan our day accordingly. But what has happened is that has now been digitized to the point where you have the information available on an app, and it figures out your block based on the area you put in. So that's the benefit. And likewise, we've come up, and we're proud to share this in today's presentation, with an app that uses the push notifications on import data to deliver this to you, as opposed to printing out the Transnet updates at 6:20 in the morning or at 3 o'clock in the afternoon as a controller, and then feeding that information to your release team, to your entries team, etc. You now have the information at your fingertips. And using, again, the vessel arrival, you can predict the firming of stacks much more accurately, and 9.9 or 99.9% of the time, your prediction is accurate because you are using import data to support the export cycle. So colleagues, introducing Captain UNITA, which is an app that is a prototype. And what it does is it provides you with real-time information, saving you the human resource and the ruler and the pen and the highlighter and the printer. And sometimes if you don't have ink, like we experienced some weeks back, we hopped over to the Easy Clear offices to get some printing done. But the logic behind it is you are saving resources by using digitalization to optimize the process. And so what it does, again, is it gives you a very accurate indication. So without you having to download the information, look at the number of containers on board, etc., you have the information at your fingertips. Okay, so I'm sure there probably will be some colleagues that are interested. And of course, we can share more insights after the presentation. Now, I spoke earlier of SARS and other government agencies, and I spoke of the concept of artificial intelligence. The one brilliant sell point is that this is currently happening around the world. Currently in South Africa, in terms of Section 113.80 of the Act, you download an Excel spreadsheet, the Prohibited and Restricted Goods Index, and then you've got your Schedule 1, Part 1 in terms of Section 47 and 45, where you find the rates of duty. Why not merge the two together and have a one-stop shop? In other words, digitization, and that will invariably digitalize the process because you now have access to the HS code, you have access to the other government agency requirement and the rate of duty, and it's online. It's not a pipe dream, nor is it pie in the sky. It is currently happening by Her Majesty's Revenue Customs in the UK, by European Union Customs, and by Singapore Customs. They're adopting international benchmarking, and we as South Africa can do the same. Which brings me to my penultimate slide, which is the key insights from SARS and other government agencies. The most important aspect, colleagues, that we look at in terms of supply chain is service reliability. And in that, there's three elements. There's time, there's cost, and there's speed. When you digitalize the process, you address the issue of time and speed, and also cost. As explained earlier, when you have information in advance, it prevents or circumvents the reactive costs, storage, demurrage, etc., that's experienced further down the supply chain. And on that note, just to bring it back home to a practical example, we're currently dealing with a case with NRCS where the LOA has not been applied for, and the client is facing close to R500,000 in storage. Now, I look back at our cell phone and I look at Google Maps as an example to show you the logic. When you see the red line, it's traffic, so you either divert and you take a different route that is still compliant. So mapping it back here is that when you realize that an LOA is required and it has not been applied for, you would be saving close to R500,000, and it does not only impact the supply chain, it impacts the economy of SA Inc. because it is invariably supply chains that compete with each other. Countries do not compete with each other. So when you have inefficient supply chain in the country, using the insights from SARS and other government agencies, we as business have a responsibility to provide input to SARS to shape the narrative, to shape the desired outcome. If it is to be, it is up to us. So we all have a responsibility. So if we can take away one key message from this presentation, is to look at what we are currently doing, digitize and digitalize, transform the process to optimize the supply chain. And this is the progress that SARS have been making. There's a pilot project with DELRAD, there's e-certificates of origin, there's customs drawbacks and refunds by EDI, and I acknowledge the insights shared by Mr. Carl Wilbers at the EDI technical working group session. On that note, we commend yourself, Mr. Hestian, on an exemplary session today, as well as the host sponsors, EasyClear, Mr. Michael Henning, and Ms. Jody High. If there's any questions, we'll be happy to take it. In conclusion, I end with the quote. As SARF, we are positioned to claim our space in the supply chain for SA Inc. under the leadership and direction of our CEO and the esteemed SARF Secretariat team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Devlin. This was extremely interesting. I really learned a lot about digitization and digitalization. Thank you for giving the better understanding there. Surely looking forward to go back to YouTube and have a look at this presentation again, because you shared a lot of information. So that was great. And Devlin, hopefully also available at the panel discussion. I'm quite sure they're going to have some questions for you. So thank you very much. Really appreciate you all sharing your knowledge with us. Good, ladies and gents, we're going to have now our next presenter, and that is Mr. Desiderio Fernandes. He's a representative for ASANTROP, the Mozambican Association of Freight Forwarders, and chairperson of the Federation of Clearing and Forwarding Associations of Southern Africa. And he's going to talk about digitalization and authorized economic operators. Thank you very much, Desiderio. I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Sorry, good morning to all. My name is Desiderio Okay, my apologies. It seemed like I was muted. All right, I'll say it once again. Good morning to all. My name is Desiderio Fernandez. I represent the ASINTROP, which is the Mozambique Freight Forwarders Association. And I'm also the current sitting president of FICFASA, which is the Federation of Clearing and Freight Forwarders Association of Southern Africa, which we currently sitting with 21 national member states associations. My experience is basically plus or minus about 25 years in the logistics and freight industry. But that being said, every day is a new day. And the freight industry, freight and logistic industry, is a challenging industry. But going to the main core of today, I'll start my discussion. So let me check if I can start sharing my screen.
I don't know why we're seeing you upside down, this is, but it's fine.
All right. I hope my presentation is not upside down.
No, it isn't.
All right. Okay, let me. All right. I'm going to be talking about digitalization and authorized economic operator. Basically, my core discussion is related to movement of goods in transit. In order for the logistic chain to be effective and efficient, especially cost effective and time efficient, we need to have all the people, the key players in the logistic chain linked to each other and linked to each other digitally. Now, one of the biggest challenges we have in Southern Africa is the digitalization of the various components and various sectors. So just for you to have a general overview, I thought maybe we can just quickly share a general overview of how the supply chain works. As you can check and see, there are multiple players involved in this, and each segment of the area have their own, what you might call internal rules and regulations, which govern their industry. But however, the supply chain is a cross-sector activity, and being a cross-sector activity with a freight forwarder, most of the time is basically what you might call the weakest and the strongest link at the same time. I'll call them the weakest link in the sense that they are the ones who tend to carry and bear all the responsibility of all the different sectors. But however, the strongest links, because they're also the ones who tend to have all the key information linked to themselves. But however, there's a famous old saying, it takes two to tango. So in other words, this is an overview. We're talking about integrated digitalization now. Now, one of the main problems we tend to have in mainland Africa is the interfacing between different entities and sectors in the logistic chain at national level. Let's not talk about going to regional level, but national level. As definitely just as spoken and the other gentleman before, it is important that we have the different entities involved with the movement of goods talking to each other. And half the time they don't. And because they don't, they tend to cause delays in the movement of goods. They tend to cause delays in the transaction of goods. And they tend to cause a direct costing to the logistic chain. So at the end of the day, the end consumer suffers a consequence because the different entities are not talking to each other. As private sectors, we've gotten used to talking to each other from way back in time. So networking has always been our strong point. But however, sorry, I might be speaking something which is politically sensitive, but I like to be very blunt and straightforward. The government sectors, half the time, they don't trust each other. And because they don't trust each other, they don't talk to each other digitally. And that causes a heavy impact onto the logistics supply chain, be it at national and regional level. And sometimes we might have the example of one particular country has decided to digitalize its whole structure, but however, they don't interface with the neighboring countries. Now that then creates a problem in the sense that you can be fast from stage one, But when you reach a border point, you're going back to manual because they're not interfacing with each other, they're not talking with each other, they're not data sharing. Now, the advantage of an integrated single window concept is that you have a digitalized application and processing system, you have a one point of entry, you have a transparency of all declaration process. The response time, as the other two speakers have said, it's quicker, it's faster, and it's clear. And you can benchmark your performance on each sector. And the most importantly, there is accountability across the board. So you're able to pinpoint where your bottlenecks is, where your delays are, why the delays are there, and then be able to look at solutions for that to improve the workflow and improve the movement of goods. Remember, in Africa, all our movement of goods is by trucking, and any stoppages is an added cost to that product which is sitting on that vehicle, or maybe on that rail wagon. Okay, but that's another story for another day in terms of the rail wagon. But that being said, digitalization is very important, and interfacing, talking, integrated single window concept, that is the core essence. If you want to reduce the cost of doing business in Africa, we need to have integrated digitalization and a single window approach. We have success stories example. Mauritius is the first one. Mauritius has digitalized and they have a single window approach for plus or minus since 2014. Okay, where they're able to view everything from the moment the vessel arrives in the port until the moment the cargo is handed at the end consumer's door. And Mauritius can be able to clear a process within 3 hours of discharge. So in other words, your container is discharged on the quayside, within 3 hours, your truck can already be in the port to query your container, if all duties and taxes have been paid, and within 6 hours, your cargo has already been delivered. So what's the advantage of that? You have zero additional cost. You don't pay port storage, you don't pay demurrage, you don't have standby charges of the transporter because there's been delay on documentation flow. So that at the end of the day, it improves the cost of the product which is going to the consumer in the end market. So you are able to improve the work life of everybody in the society. That being said, we now go into the accredited operators. The accredited operators is a core essence in order for you to digitalize the movement of goods. Now, the current practice of the accredited operator program, which is happening, is all for the big companies. But however, an accredited operator can be anybody, as long as we do it on a risk-based factor. Okay. Now, this is the description of what a risk management it should be, according to the WCO, okay, and the revised Kyoto Convention listing. All right. Now, the problem is most of the entities tend to rely on financial binding compliance to be able to put you as an accredited operator. That in the initial as a pilot stage is fine, but then remember, it's not only the big companies with the deep pockets who tend to operate in the logistic chain. In Africa, 80% of the operators, cross-border operators, are actual SMEs, and they don't have deep financial pockets, but however, they're compliant. So my personal view, and usually what I tend to speak in my discussions with my colleagues and partners, I call the government parts as partners. We, the private sector and the government entities, we are partners in business. We are not competitors. We are partners in business because we can't do without them and they can't do without us. All right. So we always need to know that we need to work together. All right. And that is where the mutual recognition falls in. Mutual recognition is not only between government to government, but government to the private sector as well. Okay. The government entities who are involved with vetting, screening, and approving, they should work on the principle that if you as a private entity are registered and compliant to all the national regulations and requirements, that in principle should be one of the bases for them to put you on a mutual recognition level and put you as an accredited operator, not on how deep is your pocket. Because the private sector are there to generate money under correct framework infrastructure. But they also need help from the government sector in supporting them, in supporting the business to ensure that the business flow moves quickly, smoothly, and efficiently. That is one of the core essence if we want to make business successful in Africa. Now, this is basically, sorry, my apologies. I seem to have, okay. This is basically how the framework structure works in terms of risk assessment and accreditation. Now, if you can check, you have the compliance, it does say simplified process. But however, at the moment, for the accredited operator, the program is very intense and heavy in terms of the requirements. And as private sector, we've been lobbying, advocating, and discussing with our counterparts, which is the government sector, to simplify it, to make it simple, efficient, and cost-effective. As long as the operators comply within the norms and regulations of business transactions and regulations. So we are looking forward to that happening, and it is possible. Some of our counterparts might say, no, if you don't have the financial infrastructure to support, to have your guarantees or whatever, you cannot be an accredited operator. No, let's look at it in the terms of business efficiency and compliance. That should be the core groundwork on which you can put and streamline accredited operators. And I'm sure once you have more accredited operators on board, digitalized, registered, and operating within that system of a single window approach, we can contribute to the increase of revenue to the country. And because that will then automatically give you a return of revenue to the government, then that also helps improve the industry and the country in whole. So this is the general overview of what a customs risk analysis is in transaction processing. Okay, you have the risk assessment factor, which at some instances at the moment, it is still partially human. It is not digital, it is not automated. So that is the initial problems where we have some delays on that, because you still have partial of the human intervention. The validation factor, that has been digitalized and worked because it is linked to the HS coding. So that to a certain extent has already been digitalized. But however, the approval factor of the risk assessment approach is still manual on most countries. And that is a final delay, if I can use that word, which needs to be moved out of the way and digitalized. 2 countries have done that, like I said, Mauritius and Rwanda. So it is possible for the other countries in the continent to do that. The origin of the products, with that, yes, that is a thing which has already been digitalized with a certificate of origin. Nowadays, you cannot ship anything, be it air freight, sea freight, or road freight, without the certificate of origin. And the certificate of origin is one of the documents which has a mutual recognition globally. And that is a very good process towards digitalization of the other concept, because that is a coessence, or if I can use a word, that is a stepping stone towards the next stage of getting everything digitalized. Because if you can accept and approve the certificate of origin, there's no reason why you cannot digitalize the costing linked to the HS coding calculations in terms of revenue collection and calculators for the risk factor component linked to the operator performance. Okay. Now, if you can check the supply chain, you have various players linked on that, and you also have various risks. But however, those risks are mitigated with a lot of digitalization, because with the digitalization, you have transparency, you have data sharing, and you have digital verification in real time. So that also helps you to improve your movement and your transactional processing. So that being said, this is what customs always look first, okay? Customs first target, which should actually be revised and reviewed to a certain extent. Some member states, countries have changed their overview. In fact, they've even changed the customs names from revenue collection to business relationship. So that means they've also changed their mindset concept, because usually the first concept or the first mindset of customs is revenue collection. So fiscal control and revenue collection. But however, the fiscal control and revenue collection, if not digitalized and used on a risk assessment component, causes hindering and NTBs, because you have a lot of human intervention factor and there's slow processing in that. So you have the physical verification, you have the physical approval of the documentation. They might say, yes, we digitalize. They only digitalize in your declaration. But however, the physical verification, the risk assessment factor is still being manual. Well, that should be digital, 100%. And then you already have criteria in the system which will flag up any high value goods or any sensitive product which are high risk factors. Then only those should be focused in terms of any necessary physical verification or added additional safety measures to be put in place to safeguard the movement of the transaction. So this is what we're looking at. If you have data sharing, and if you have digitalization, and if you have blockchain, to a certain concept, everything falls under a single risk indicator. Why? Because everybody contributes to the information which is in that table. And everybody is aware what are the risk factors. So everybody knows what are their individual obligations. And because you have a clear digital overview, there is transparency, there is control digitally, which can be counter-checked and verified with the physical movement of the goods in transit. So one of our calls as private sector is always the government should digitalize and they should interface between their intergovernment agencies. And then secondly, they should interface between member states, because the interfacing will reduce the downtime. You have sitting, waiting for approval of a document from another ministry or waiting for clearance at the border from the neighboring states, because the moment you submit your initial declaration at your point of departure, that document, if they're already interfacing on the corridor, that document will be shared immediately across the corridor all the way to destination. So when the physical movement or the physical vehicle arrives at the exit point in country 1, the entry point in country 2 already has all the paperwork. So it's just a matter of verifying the carrier, verifying that the cargo is intact, there hasn't been any breach to the security components, which is a seal usually in containerized or even in bulk cargo, and then get the cargo moving. So instead of having a truck sitting a day, 2 days, 5 or 7 days in some instances at a border point, it'll only sit there for half an hour to 1 hour at the maximum. So you have reducing of circulation, you have reduction of bottlenecks at the border, you have less workloads because you don't have to have a huge infrastructure for you to control all that factor, and you have reduction of logistic costing. All right. So this is basically an overview of understanding what are the risks related to the complete supply chain. Now, if you can see, the supply chain is each component has an individual risk associated to it. But however, the full supply chain has a collective risk related to it. And that risk is executed or initiated from the moment the supplier says, I'm good to go, until the moment the goods is delivered to the importer after payment of duties and taxes. So the full responsibility of that risk component usually sits on the supply chain. And usually that is linked to the logistic operators, be it from the port of loading, be it in on carriage. If it's by sea, it's the vessel operators. If it's by road, it's the truck operators. Be it at the declaration points, okay, at the border points, and be it at the transporter until it arrives at the importer after it's paid his duty and taxes. So the accredited operator program is important because then that will bring transparency, that will bring synergy, and that will bring smoother movement of goods across the border. Okay. This is a future overview of what we would like it to happen and what we would like it to be. As you can see, you have some components which are gray areas and some which are green areas. In other words, it means those areas, sorry, gray or orange in this aspect. In other words, it means those areas, there still is some work to be done in terms of linkage to the final destination. Okay, you don't have the blockchains. The blockchains is operating only in certain countries, but not in majority of the countries. So what actually happens? Your initial form information at port of loading might be digitalized, but when it gets to the port of discharge or the port of transit, it is done manually. Why do I call it manually? Because the transit agent is the one who has to submit the information in the system. So it's only then that's when it is redigitalized from the port of discharge in customs. And then that process, if they're not interfacing with the neighboring countries, only is efficient from the port until the exit border. And then it goes back to manual. But however, if they're interfacing with each other, hopefully until the destination countries, then that information is redigitalized from the port of discharge until destination country. I will no longer call it an utopia dream, but I'll call it a reality which needs a lot of collective work from all the contributors in the supply chain, especially in African mainland. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. There are a lot of pilots progresses happening under the triple TFP. They in fact have launched a couple of corridors right now. They are still in the background working with getting government, member states interfacing and intergovernment departments interfacing at national level so that we have a seamless flow of digital supply chain. We looking at maybe, sorry, this is the publication in case anybody wants to go through that. That will be presented at the end of the session. That is all from me, and thank you very much. Will questions and answers, I presume that will be done later on at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Desiderio. Yeah, this was extremely interesting. I'm quite sure people will contact you afterwards and also have a chat with you in the panel discussion, which will be after our next presentation. But thank you very much. We really appreciate the great presentation you've shared with us. Clearly, yeah, individual obligation is very important, and understanding the risks in a greater supply chain to have a seamless supply chain. I've learned a lot again about the supply chain today. So thank you very much for sharing with us. Right, ladies and gents, let's just quickly look at our program again. We're doing very good today on time. Right, so our next presenter, the last one, not the least, obviously, is our host today, Mr. Michael Henning. He's a general manager at EasyClear. And he's going to talk to us about the impact of technology on trade and trade facilitation. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Harry. Let me find my presentation and share that. Okay, I take it you have it on screen.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks, and a big thank you to our previous presenters. The detail in which you presented has been phenomenal, and some very insightful ideas shared. It's clear that there's a strong case for enabling private and public sector collaboration to go digital, and of course digitalize the supply chain processes for the benefit of all of us in the supply chain. Thank you. I'm also looking forward to seeing that prohibited and restricted goods list become digital, so that we may digitalize processes within our own applications to assist clients and trade within the supply chain. So we've heard a lot about digitalization, and technology is certainly shaping the way in which we do business. It's funny that we talk about trade and we talk about the sharing of data. We're certainly trading data on a micro level daily through various APIs and systems integrations. International trade is, of course, still driven by supply and demand, but replacing traditional contracts of carriage with blockchain, and we heard that in the earlier presentation, blockchain-driven solutions that protect the integrity of contracts and guaranteed payments, couple that with e-certification, paperless release notification, online banking, and integrated solutions. Traders can certainly now reach far beyond what we knew as the traditional brick and mortar shop face clientele and trade across border securely with ease. What is interesting to see is mobile connectivity. That's certainly evolved, and there are more and more people that are plugging in. I call it plugging in, though without a doubt much more can be done, I think, in order to improve digital literacy in communities for both women and children across the world. And if one looks at the image on the screen, there's still a single common factor, and that is people. As a software service provider, we're advocates for technological innovation, and certainly the use of technology to facilitate trade, particularly when we witness bottlenecks at the land borders, which we've all experienced within our supply chain. And we're talking about this continent where much of the trade and the movement of goods takes place on road and some of it on rail. And again, perhaps a topic for another discussion. But we've witnessed these bottlenecks at our land borders and the queues of people at SARS windows for declaration processing. Fortunately, a thing of the past, but with documentation that needs to go through OGAs, still somewhat a thing of the present. And a few here may remember the days when a customs declaration was accompanied by a tally slip handed in or lost in a pile of other declarations, and waiting to collect the release the next day, or in some cases days thereafter. So the introduction of the computer with its first floppy disk, and then stiffy drive, and then we moved to USB device, that began the modernization journey away from paper to a more seamless interaction with revenue authorities. This, however, introduced, I believe, its own set of challenges as our relationships with people that we interacted with almost on a daily basis began to erode as processes changed. However, the adoption of technology as a result has been a long and slow process, gaining momentum more recently as the benefits are realized through improved efficiencies within business processes. And that's the digitalization that was spoken about earlier. These have then resulted in cost savings and increased revenue within the private sector. The same adoption of technology, I feel, has perhaps been a little slower in the public sector, due primarily to the pace at which policy changes are implemented, coupled also perhaps with a lack of funding or political will, as has been the case in the past, and last, process change and the upskilling of people responsible for the implementation of the new processes. What is encouraging, those SARS, in our case, have led the charge on this and are certainly by far the quickest to realize and identify a return on investment and reduced risk by implementing technological change. I think thanks largely to the leadership and partnership with private sector. The change begins by identifying the participants in the supply chain. And in some way, it can be viewed as, I feel, re-establishing those relationships that we valued so much in the past. And this begins by digitizing former manual registration processes and stitching together that picture, that single window of the role players that interact with one another, and more importantly, with revenue authorities and OGAs around the globe. My fellow speakers have covered this in their presentations, giving you insights into SARS licensing framework. The recent RLA onboarding project undertaken by SARS is testimony to the digitization and identification of the supply chain, which supports, of course, the AEO and SACU AEO projects, including the recent pilot project like the N4 project, the SARS CBRTA AEO accredited program, which was aimed at reducing transit times at our land borders. So what do we see? Well, the advances in technology now mean that you carry the power of your computer, or of a computer, in the palm of your hand. It's certainly become easier to do business, and information has become more readily available and at your fingertips. Business to business and customs to customs integrations, I think, have reduced the risk of doing business both through secure financial transactions and digitally secured certifications like the e-certificate of origin and the recently introduced electronic FIATA bill of lading. And on a SARS front, the UCR matching that allows declarations to be matched to their respective invoices. So it's no wonder that some of the top 10 fastest growing companies in South Africa are in fact technology or IT and software companies. EasyClear has introduced our very own mobile application with the software as a service model adopted many years ago, and direction in which technology is moving. It is allowed our end users to transact with SARS electronically from anywhere in the world. The mobile app, which is not ideal for the customs declaration submission, but certainly allows the user to track shipment statuses, uplift client credit limits, and now allows your customer to sign the ePOD for real-time shipment delivery confirmation. Third-party integration across multiple accounting solutions like Xero and Sage, Sage Online, SAP and Pastel complement the supply chain solutions offered and are testimony, I think, to the capabilities of software solution providers when technology is adopted and promoted. So despite all the technology which can positively shape our supply chain, the result, I feel, of some inaction and the impact certainly of corruption that has led to dire consequences for the South African economy. Repeated lobbying of government to take action and collective will, I think, of the private sector, trade and industry bodies such as SARF and BUSA and others has, it seems, finally started to yield some results, with our president proposing a national logistics crisis committee to deal with the catastrophic failure of logistics infrastructure. And with this, I truly hope we see some change in the rail sector primarily, but certainly across our logistics supply chain. So it's clear that change is necessary, and change requires people to stand up and be brave, be different, challenge the status quo. To those captains of industry, my fellow speakers, brave people who have taken a stand, well, I salute you, and I challenge all here to do the same for it is people who drive the technology that can bring about the change in this industry. Thank you. Thank you, Harry, also, and the Transport Forum for the opportunity for people like us to meet and collaborate and hopefully make a change and a difference in this industry. And a huge thank you to the previous speakers. I think you touched on many of the aspects that I mentioned in my much shorter presentation. I can't try to keep it simple and easy, but I think the detail that you shared certainly and clearly advocates the change for digitizing and digitalizing our supply chain. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you so much, Michael. A big hand to our host for a great presentation. I think you guys done excellent in following up and SARS participation with the private sector and taking the power of technology to new levels. That's great. And EasyClear, the mobile app for tracking shipments and so forth is impressive. And I think a lot of people would like to know more about that. So yeah, let's look at the change which is so important you're talking about, and maybe we can help by doing a panel discussion now. So can I ask that all our panelists kindly switch on your cameras and unmute yourself so that I can bring you into the panel. This is very okay. The orientation has been rectified.
Thank you. Sorry for having done the presentation upside down.
That's good. We see Makibinyani. Have we got Makibinyani? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
There we go. Let's bring him in. Right, ladies and gents, there we have our members of the panel being ready there to answer questions. So the way we're going to do that, you're welcome to, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a function that you can raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself and then I will recognize you. And once you've been recognized, you can ask a question. You can ask a question to the panel as a whole or one member of the panel, and we'll give the panel opportunity then to respond. So the guys on YouTube, you're also welcome to text questions and I will convey the question to the panelists. So let's see, let's wait to see, give people some opportunity to think and ask some questions then. Maybe while we're waiting, I can ask a question maybe, and that is, obviously all of us' concern is corruption at many levels, and maybe if one of you maybe want to respond, how we're going to overcome corruption in cross-border and this industry. Maybe a suggestion or so from one of you.
Michael, would you mind if I try to take a jab at it?
Yes, absolutely. Go for it, Devlin.
Thanks so much, Michael. So I think, Harry, for us primarily, the aspect of the financial data and information flow or product flow has to dovetail with the validations between SARS and other entities, as Michael alluded to in his presentation as well. The advanced import payment, as an example, is one of the initiatives that SARS has spearheaded. And this allows us to combat issues such as money laundering and other illicit and corrupt activities in that regard. So ultimately, it's business that provides insight to SARS. And I think Desi mentioned in his presentation that often other government agencies and SARS do not necessarily communicate, but business is the conduit that is able to bridge that divide. And hence, the input from private sector is essential to government to curb corruption by looking at specific implementations in digitization and digitalization of the supply chain.
Thank you, Devlin. Appreciate that.
Maybe if I can add a bit to that, one of the quickest way, and that's been proven by track record with these two countries which have success stories, which I mentioned, Rwanda and Mauritius, is by you digitalizing your whole structure, reducing the human intervention, you automatically curb down corruption to a huge extent. I would even say to 95%. You curb it down because there's no possibility of anybody putting corruption into the scenario because everything is transparent and digital. So it leaves little or no ground for any corruption for it to happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Desiderio. Gwen Foster, you're welcome to unmute to ask your question.
Thank you very much. Firstly, a comment, and I certainly appreciate this morning's discussion. It's absolutely relevant to a lot of my work, which is a personal passion about bringing the agricultural producers, smallholders, producer groups into the supply chain. And the barriers to entry are increasing. We are not educating government officials. We are not educating university students. We are not educating anybody on, for instance, traceability. We also, in our rural areas, do not have we do not have arrangements for rural producers to access the technology. If we expect them to pay for the cost of data, they don't know anything about it, and they're not going to do it. We also then have, under the Consumer Protection Act, we have very similar requirements, for instance, with food safety, as well as with now sustainability from our local retailers. And all of that is being interpreted politically. So if we have a look at the collective here today, if we look at the opportunities of current technology, if we have a look at the opportunities with the African Continental Free Trade Area, we've got an ideal platform, Harry, through your operation to take this forward. What I am doing right now, I need business, if I can put it that way. I'm in discussions about seamless mergers, which is one of the business models that is coming through. And that might absolutely suit and help to overcome the fragmentation that happened after deregulation. We used to have a common industry in South Africa that was regulated. We then deregulated and we got multiple industry associations, here I'm talking agriculture, that are still in many ways caught up in protecting exports, and we have ignored to a large extent the local market opportunities. So I want to make the statement, I'm happy to follow up. It's an ideal time to form an entity that can operate as a public-private partnership with government coming in. There is more than enough private funding if we can get the structure right. I have no idea how to go forward, but I just want to say thank you and make that point that we, over 90% of the smallholder farmers fail, and that was an assessment, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. We have to do something. We are facing conflict on the ground and it's unnecessary. And the sustainability side gives rural communities the benefit because they have not used heavy chemicals and intensive farming and all of that. I believe within 5 years, South Africa can be #1 again, which we achieved in the 90s with pallet tracking in the fruit industry. I'd love to see that, and I see this collective as an ideal vehicle. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Gwen, for that positive view. Appreciate that. Let's hear from the panel that want to respond.
Yeah, I think if I can just take a respond, and I mentioned it in terms of digital literacy, certainly on this continent, that can certainly be improved, and we collectively need to bring this and bring communities together. And Gwen, I'm happy to reach out and see how we can be of assistance, and maybe through organizations, Devlin, such as SARF as well. You know, if I just look at the logistics industry as well, when RCG was being implemented, how disparate things were when you had vessel operators and port operators, and everybody was in their own little silo until we started bringing people together and collaborating. And that's really what it's about. In my welcome, that last slide was to connect, collaborate, and communicate. And I think that collectively we can certainly do more. Absolutely.
No, I'd love to do that. I want to add one other point, and that is, whereas we have a lot of applications that work on mobile, cell phones, etc., we are not expecting any form of driver's license for those vehicles. And the last thing in the world I would want is data that can influence the business, the community, and everything to do with the product coming in on somebody's private phone. We have no idea of what that person's capability is of responding to the questions and providing the information. We're in a world of fake news. We're in a world of, all of that. So that aspect comes in, and it comes into the additional jobs. It comes into local services centers, etc. Thank you. I look forward to picking up, Michael.
Gwen, just a quick question before you get off from here, if I may, Harry.
Yes.
I think one of the issues which you mentioned is the cost of them getting involved with the digital platform. Maybe one of the things which could be suggested, and that's one of the aspects which we also tend to lobby at regional level, is introduce a program which basically it's a pay-as-you-go, but at a low costing, because that way the consumers don't have to pay an annual fee for them to do something, but they pay a fee each time they want to use the service. I don't know. That's my little input and contribution.
No, I think that's a very valid point, and there would be other people far better to able to comment on that. The concept of an agricultural services center, if we look at a rural community, for instance, a traditional community, that is one way of having capable people, competent people, and a services center to serve the broader producer community, if I can put it that way. And that comes right down to ensuring common quality if we are looking, and volumes. It's managed production. That production side is what is falling out of the mix right now. And the supply chain typically picks up from the first point of processing. So it's that production side where there are opportunities. I do believe we will get funding. We also, just to give a very simple example, Elsenburg in the Western Cape has, and this is a couple of years ago, they supported drone pilots. The drone pilot, and these are youth in rural areas or agricultural areas, the drone pilot suits the youth. They need to know how to follow a flight plan. They need to know how to manage the equipment. They don't need to know how to set up the data stream or to process the data stream. That is an administrative, a data admin task. And I was very interested that the Minister of Agriculture in her speech earlier this week referred to the fact that drones would be deployed. So everything is there. We've got all of the entities. We need to bring it together. And that is a public-private partnership. That is, I'm happy to advise. I've been in this field since the early 90s. I am not the person to do that. I don't have the business. I'm more program orientated. I don't have the business nous, but I have done a lot of the thinking, and we can pick up from there. I really, really appreciate today. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Much appreciated. Right, we've got a question here from Mr. Bonga. I just want to find out from CBRTA about how many companies participating in the OCAS pilot project. The second question is whether the scheme will be voluntary or compulsory. The other question is about the relation program and the authorized economic operator from SARS. Is there any relation between these programs? So maybe Makibinyane, if you can answer that.
Okay, colleagues, the pilot project was open for all operators, but only to find that we only had one operator who participated in that exercise. And we used a fleet of about 115 fleet or trucks for that exercise. And now, just that we are preparing for the second phase of the pilot. At least we have already processed more than 5 cross-border operators who are now qualified or accredited to undertake that program. So during the first phase, we only had one operator who qualified for accreditation. Then in the second phase, we'll be having more. Then another second question, what was it?
Let me have a look here. You can open the chat room, you can see that. The second question is whether the scheme will be voluntary or compulsory.
Okay, AUKUS, it's a compulsory system whereby the operators will be graded in different grades. The first entry point will be covering all the operators, including the small operators, up until level 5, whereby the operator shall be also accredited by the EAO. Thank you.
Thank you, Makabane. All right, there's another question from Princess Sambu. Is there something done for institutions to create a curriculum criteria which will reflect the scope of entry to smallholder farmers' business?
Is it also directed to CBRJ?
Not necessarily, so I'm not too sure who's going to answer this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that has more to do with the previous questions that we were trying to answer from when I'm not sure any of us are qualified to answer that particular question.
Okay, right. Princess, yeah.
Yeah, for Gwen.
Gwen answered this yes. Thank you very much, Gwen. Appreciate that.
I do have a question I would like to ask CBRT. My fellow panelists, we have seen on the logistic platforms that there has been a lot of complaint lately of bottlenecks at the Libombo border. What is being done in line with the pilot project which we had created in order to ease and streamline that? Because one of the challenges which we actually have at that border, and please correct me, Devlin, if I'm wrong, is that there is no coordinated approach between the various intergovernment entities. So you might have customs who are trying to streamline something, but then you have the agriculture department who's not in play. Or maybe you have the security policing, which is not even physical on the ground, or even traffic controlling. So this pilot project of yours, which is now going into phase 2, and which is going to be mandatory, do you already have all those key players inclusive in the platform? Because otherwise, sorry to say, being the bearer of bad news, it's going to fall flat on its face. Thank you.
I think before my colleague answers that, I think there's an additional role player, and that is the transporter that plays a huge role in that supply chain. And I too had very similar questions to you for our CBRTA colleagues. Sorry, thank you.
Desiree, you are 100% correct that there is uncoordinated activities within the border precinct and also along our corridors, because we do experience uncoordinated roadblocks, especially within that kilometer 7 from kilometer 7 to the border mouth, you find 4 to 5 different law enforcement agencies conducting their own roadblocks independently, which is what bringing delays and bottlenecks within that short span of distance. So we are trying to beef up this exercise so that we can achieve this single window program. Because I think Devlin has explained it very well how it works, whereby all the documentation shall be controlled under one roof. So what we have just prepared now, or even before we go to phase 2, we are in talks with all participating law enforcement agencies along that corridor, because the pilot project actually starts from N4 in Pretoria to the border exit in Lebombo. But the most hectic route is within 10 kilometers from the border gate. So we are also in talks with the law enforcement agencies who work with one voice, or to conduct roadblocks or inspection points under one roof, because to conduct roadblocks and checkpoints independently brings the bottlenecks and those delays and increases to cost of doing business by the operators. So within the border precinct, yes, we don't exist within the border precinct, but what customs, which is SARS, is trying to also bring is also that single window program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Makibenyane. Ladies and gents, it seems to me that we have all the people happy. There's no more questions on YouTube either. What we can do now is we're going to ask some closing remarks from our panelists. I think we can start there with Desiderio, and then we'll go to Devlin, and then we'll go to Makibenyane, and then we'll ask our host Michael Henning for his closing remarks at the end, and also to close the session for us. Then after that, I'm just going to share some slides about the SAPEX conference. I've asked us just to share information on that, and then I'll close the session. So let's start with Desiderio for closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll try to be as brief as possible. Basically, my closing remarks is this type of platforms is important and essential, not only at country level, but also at regional and continental level, because then it brings more awareness to the people of what we need to do collectively, be it the private sector or be government, in order for us to streamline and improve business and increase the ease of doing business at national, regional, and continental level. That being said, our echo and cry as private sector, especially the logistics and freight forwarding industry, is that the government entities should really fast track their digitalization and inter-entity connectivity, as well as member states connectivity, because then that will improve the efficiency and effectiveness of logistics and supply chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Desiderio, for your participation. Devlin, closing remarks, please.
Thank you very much, Harry. Once more, thanks to the fellow panelists for the insights shared earlier. The closing comments from our side will be that all the attendees that are in the custom space, and even those that are not, all members of business, have a responsibility to feed through associations like SAF, SEPA, etc., the information and challenges experienced on the ground, so that we as the initiator, remember, without business, there's no cargo that flows to the supply chain. And so with that logic, the other government agencies, as an example, who drive the regulation for specific products based on their mandate, and the processes that take place between business and that government agency will not necessarily be fed through to SARS in terms of the cross-sectional derivative analysis. So on that point, we encourage all the attendees and delegates on the call to lobby or engage SARF, rather, to lobby on your behalf in terms of looking at the challenges that exist, and we can pinpoint solutions to those challenges. And we make SARS aware of the scenarios, so that when we do have the technical presentations by our esteemed colleagues at SARS, it is very much co-created and it's proactive. And we then do not find ourselves trying to fix a situation or scenario that has been preempted incorrectly due to the misalignment. So again, business is the initiator, other government agencies are the driver, and SARS is the administrator of the legislation from the DTIC and the various other government agencies. In closing, if it is to be, it is up to us. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you. Thank you very much, Devon. Really appreciate it. Right, Makibinani, closing remarks.
Okay, colleagues. AEO AUKUS program is open for all operators. All operators in the sense that even the small operators who are not even accredited under AEO, but who are serving consignor and consignee who's accredited, they are welcome. And let me also tell you that during the phase 1, we were accrediting operators manually, and now our accreditation is going to be digitized. And also, let me tell you that this exercise has been so very fruitful, in the sense that operators who were taking about 2 trips to Maputo Harbor, others used to take 3 rounds per week, and others 4 rounds per week, which is an increased productivity to the operators and the efficiency within the border or government agencies. So may I all ask all the operators to apply for this second phase pilot project. Thank you.
Thank you, Makibinani. I believe many people will collaborate with you guys. So thank you for presenting today and participating. I really appreciate that. Ladies and gents, let's give this panel a hand before I ask Michael to close. Let's give this people a big hand. We've had such a beautiful and competent panel of presenters today, adding lots of value to our businesses and lives. Thank you so much. Michael, please close the session for us, and then I'll share the slides of the SAPIC conference.
Thank you, Harry. Before I do close, the supply chain, the global supply chain, it's huge. And I just want to say to those on the call and the guest speakers and participants and operators, don't be put off by the size of the problem. You only eat an elephant 1 bite at a time. And I think if we collaborate, connect, and cooperate with one another, we can actually eat that elephant and we can get to where we want to be. So don't be discouraged. Reach out to your local service providers, if it be your local bodies and organizations, participate, get involved. We can make a change. Thank you, Harry. And on that, I thank you all for your participation. To the guest speakers, for those last-minute speakers, thank you for assisting and collaborating with us to make this a very meaningful session. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Easy Clear, for hosting us, and Jody Haig, who assisted in compiling this agenda. Really appreciate it. Ladies and gents, I'm going to slide a few slides quickly with the SAPIC's conference. SARF asked us to just show this quickly. And it's a few slides, but you can obviously after this go and have a look on YouTube, Transform's YouTube channel to have more about this. So let me just close that little screen there. So I'm taking you through these slides quickly, and then we'll close the session. So there we go, guys. Thank you very much for attending, and we see you at the Transport Forum soon. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Take care.